Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I must say that I was really pleased at some of the things that I heard today from the three presenters. I think that I spend a lot of time looking from the 50-foot view, as they would say, and I spend a lot of time looking at national data and statewide data. So to actually get examples where this is being implemented on the ground really support some of the stuff that we've been saying all along. I'm going to comment in order of the presenters, so the things that struck out at me, and maybe we can have some conversation about that. I'm usually really interactive, so if while I'm speaking there's anything that jumps out at you and you want to discuss it, and feel free as part of the audience to participate. Like, I'd really encourage that. So when Tricia was speaking earlier, things that struck out at me was first she said, Georgia was the 33rd largest economy in the world. That was something that was new for me. I had no idea that Georgia was the 33rd largest economy in the world when people usually talk about the size of Texas, the size of California. I hadn't had any information on Georgia, so that was really interesting. And what that says to me is that we have to have a focus on Georgia's role in the international economy and how we actually compete. I remember some time ago, I think it was 2006, when Kia was moving into Georgia. There was some talk about the effectiveness of the workforce, the extent to which the workforce was actually prepared to deal with the type of technical skills that's required for this, for this firm. Tricia spoke about the skills trade and all of the negative perceptions that often go along with that, and that's really key. Sometimes when we speak about CTE, career and technical education, it's almost a bad word in some of the circles that I roll in, and most of this has to do with tracking and this historical precedent that we've had for identifying certain groups of people that we thought that might be much more better suited to CTE type of training over academic training. So we've had this legacy, this historical legacy, and we're having a hard time shaking it. Well, we're going to really need to shake it for several reasons. Those middle skills and middle jobs are driving a lot of the economy today. Some of the fastest growing opportunities are in those middle skill jobs. Earlier today, when I spoke about manufacturing and 600,000 jobs that go unfilled, a lot of those jobs are really good manufacturing jobs that pay between $35,000 and sometimes $50,000 as a startup salary. And as a statistic that because we respond to money, so that's really good for us to have those numbers. As a statistic, 43% of licenses and certifications can earn more than AA degrees on average. So there are certain types of test-based licenses and certifications that if you pursue those or a year or 2 years, they can earn more than an associate's degree. And 27% of licenses and certifications can earn more than BAs, than some BAs. So there's value to those middle skills. There's demand for those middle skill jobs. And we have to shake this demon we have that CTE is only for those that can't pursue academic careers. I wondered about when, I guess Ken and Jean were speaking earlier, and they were talking about interviewing businesses to develop the KSAs required in order to build curriculum. My instinct moved towards the Common Core. Because when I've spoken to those who are at the helm of looking at the Common Core standards for the 46 states that have signed on, they talk about the new standards of curriculum at the K-12 for Common Core as having achieved some of the goals that Ken and Jean are speaking about. In fact, they say that these types of courses ought to make you career and college ready, and we almost use those two terms interchangeably, and I still have a little bit of a disconnect, a personal disconnect with understanding exactly how those two can be used interchangeably. I mean, the career skills, which combine some of the KSAs and the soft skills that we've been speaking about, might be for someone who intends to go into the workplace immediately after graduating, might be a little bit different from what you do as a first-year undergrad. So, I'm going to throw back a question to Ken and Jean about talking about those KSAs and how they're related to the Common Core, if at all, or if there's any discussion on that. Again, with the KSAs, the knowledge, skills, and abilities required to do the job, and interviewing businesses, and then really that's the way to go. Businesses who every single opportunity tell you about what's missing. I mean, we have this anomaly that exists. So many people who are unemployed, in Georgia, the above national average unemployment rate, existing side by side with jobs that go unfilled. And when you ask businesses, they can tell you what they need. It's surprising to most that it's usually not Algebra 2. I mean, they would, you go to educators and their natural instinct is that you got to do Algebra 2 and you got to do calculus and that sort of thing. But what we've done at the center at Georgetown is if we've spent some time looking at ONET. Have you guys heard of ONET? The ONET database. And that ONET database, Occupational Network Database, is administered by the Employment and Training Administration. And what they do is for each of the 1,000 or so occupations, and I saw a lot of nodding heads, so I wouldn't go into much detail, but for each of those 1,000 or so occupations, they tell you the knowledge, the skills, the abilities, the values, the interests, the tasks associated with those jobs in a huge amount of detail. So what we did is we took those 1,000 occupations, we connected at the occupation level to the ACS database, and then we said, okay, now let's see, based on the jobs that are available, based on the forecast of jobs in the economy, what's the relationship with the KSAs? How much math do you require? How much reading skills do you require? How much language skills do you require? And we found that in terms of the high level of math, the highest level of math that we need, well, if you're an engineer or you're in STEM, which is about 5% of the economy, sure, that's what you need. But for most people, you need an average level of an understanding, especially within context. So the way we teach math within context is also important. And we have these really great charts that show you how these KSAs are distributed throughout the economy. What's interesting as well from looking at ONET data across jobs and across occupations and how they distribute across the economy is that certain physical skills that were once important are no longer as important in order for you to get that job. So we threw up a lot of logistics and transportation and management, which is one of the 16 career clusters. Logistics as one of the career clusters of transportation. And what we find is that throughout time, the only physical skill that seems to matter over time is near vision. Can you figure out why? Why do you think near vision still matters over time? Computers. Because there's so many, you got to read the computers and, and it's spending all this time on the computers. I mean, everyone needs it. There's some way it's incorporated in many types of different occupations. So that's, I thought, was interesting as well. Articulation agreements within states. I think this is something that Jean raised. My instinct from hearing this was, okay, yes, that's really important. I would be interested, and maybe it's just pie in the sky, but also trying to understand how this works across state as well, particularly for our transfer students who might want to come in. How do we ensure that irrespective of where you're from, what state you come from, I mean, all of the transfer students, that they, in fact, are able to transfer their credit, they are recognized across the board. I know that's really easier said than done, and we really need to focus within state before we extend it, but I think that's something we should look at. I cared and heard a lot about maintaining accreditation, and that's really, really an important topic for this reason. The first time Stan Jones, I think a few years ago, started talking about Complete College America, I think it was a different name back then, and started talking about these programs that take you through, that, can I be frank here, that cut through a lot of the gen ed courses and just take you directly to the training that you need. The first time I heard him speak about it and speak passionately about that, there was a lot of backlash from educators that felt we were watering down the degree. A lot of backlash that felt that, you know, oh, well, the students need to be able to find themselves. We need to be able to do literature and to study Shakespeare. And if you don't study Shakespeare in your transportation and logistics program, then you're not going to be a well-rounded student at the end. Well, I think that he's made them all, you know, eat their words, because what we've been able to do is to demonstrate the success rate of so many of the students who are able to complete, to attach themselves to the workforce, and to do so without, quote unquote, watering down the value of the degree. So this notion of maintaining accreditation and standards are upheld, and to make sure that the caliber of the type of degree that people obtain, you know, even if we do it in this curtailed and shortened pathway, is withheld, is very, very, very important. And I just want to end this feedback, so I sort of threw out some questions to you guys, and the audience is very, very quiet. Usually I would walk down to see if you guys would respond, but I'll leave you alone. But I wanted to end with something that Jean had started off with, and I'll tell you, I'll be biased. It's a paper that we've done at the center talking about the 22 million shortage. We'll fall, you know, we need an additional 22 million post-secondary workers, and we're going to fall short by 3 million. And I just wanted to explain what that means. I mean, the 3 million post-secondary degrees that we're going to fall short, that's even given current growth rates. It's assuming certain growth rates, and we're falling behind in our graduation rates at the secondary level. We're falling behind on our graduation rates at the post-secondary level. So I'm thinking that the assumptions upon which this 3 million is based are slowly being eroded away. And what does that say to me? It says to me that that shortage might even be higher. How do we know there's a shortage? We know there's a shortage based on the premium, the wage premium that even in the height of this recession was being offered to holders of post-secondary vocational certificates, holders of associate's degrees, holders of bachelor's degrees. I mean, we have to ensure that we continue on the path. I saw a couple slides up there that, you know, for the first time in one of these discussions with post-secondary, that we actually look back to where the pipeline is coming from. That we could actually look backwards into secondary and look forward into the workforce. Usually all you get from tertiary education is, well, if they had sent us better people, we wouldn't need, you know, we wouldn't need so much remediation. All you get are complaints. Instead, what I see here, and I'm really positive about that, is this desire to work throughout the system and the recognition that K-12 is the pipeline for post-secondary, is the pipeline for workforce. And once we have these agreements that unite the three, then we are closer to the goal of achieving, you know, the 250,000 additional graduates by 2020. So I'm going to end by saying that, you know, I really think that what I've observed here is a good start, a good way forward. I was in Tennessee a few months ago with Stan, and I thought that Tennessee was really the model state in terms of how it's been connecting its K-20 situation, K-20 workforce development, but I think I'm going to really have to look into Georgia now and add Georgia soon to my list. So thank you, guys.
We've got, looks like 8 minutes left for questions. I think we've had some wonderful speakers this afternoon. Now we open it up for questions from our esteemed group. Any questions? Yes, sir, in the back.
For the cement attack and build a server, can you tell us what skills, knowledge, and abilities were that you were hearing from industry for your specific program?
Yes, sir. I think that's a good question. I was going to, if no one raised their arm, I was going to jump up here and expand on Nicole's comment about the KSAs. I don't want to leave the impression that in the academic world, businesses came in and started telling us that you need 2 calculuses and 1 trig. That was not the case, and perhaps I overstated that. What businesses were looking for, starting off with some of the more soft skill things of work ethics, just getting people to come to work on time, mathematics, the ability to read, the technology that drives a business. Many times they might get lambasted a little bit in the sense of we're not producing the graduate that they need. Maybe we're not keeping up with technology. They have to stay competitive. So I think the common topics on the soft side is what initially came out. So we had to dig down a little deeper. But on the KSAs, without getting into specific itemized bullets, where the companies were looking at was the credential level as they were matching that to their structure. So in other words, many students that they were finding, and if you talk to companies, you know, we all brought a rep to this summit this time around, and I think that is a great idea, was the fact that many people they were finding only want to operate the machinery or drive the taxi. They don't want to own the company. And so consequently, we wanted to make sure that if that entry-level person only needed a certificate, then here are the pieces that we want to see. And those turned out to be more on your occupational machine operating elements. Then as you went ahead and you added your general studies courses into the diploma, the associate degree, and then on into the baccalaureate degree, they saw what was coming out of that program to give those students more of the management leadership aspects that were found in many of the classes, so that they were then marrying that up and correlating that to their promotion scheme, their professional development scheme. The one example I always like to use is someone who was a pretty influential, high-ranking official in the Georgia Ports Authority, and his son had went to Georgia Southern and got that program under his belt and then got some practical experience working, was the fact that we want that person to come in and start there, work in the containers at the port, and then eventually become the executive director of the Georgia Ports Authority with a PhD from Georgia Southern. So once that was clearly articulated to us, I think we had our marching orders on how to build this. A little bit of a long answer, but the other piece of that was bringing in the high school, as Nicole alluded to, of reaching back into that area for what those 10th, 11th, and 12th graders could get a sample of that and come away from that high school with their diploma, but also qualified in that career pathway.
Question in the back of the room?
Yeah, Ken, on the map, did you all talk about something, and we talked a lot this year and last year at the summit about students not necessarily all needing college algebra. Did you all talk about that, or did you leave college algebra in your curriculum?
It is in there. We left it in there.
Did it come up at all in discussions with the employer?
Not with the industry, not in that level of specificity. Obviously, mathematics was always a topic in a broad sense, but they're not speaking our lingo in terms of, you know, 10, 12, and 11, 11, and all that sort of stuff.
Do you have an opinion about it as to whether we need to get away from college algebra in a lot of our programs? Or?
At this point within logistics, I wouldn't offer an opinion. Our numbers are still low. We just started this semester. That's something we could easily watch. And I think between Gene and I and seeing what comes out of that, get a little data behind us, we can make that decision down the road.
If I could add just something, I think I can speak loudly enough without the mic, but if you look at any level of education, if you're looking at at P through 12, or if you're looking at associate level and certificates and baccalaureate, and if you compare that to what employers continue to ask for, or consumers of our product, if you think about our students and graduates as products, the very same kinds of skills emerge almost consistently. You want somebody that has good communication skills, which includes literacy. It includes the quantitative literacy as well. It includes the ability to listen and to articulate positions. But it also includes analysis, problem solving, the ability to take values into perspectives, the ability to actually become a productive citizen and understand citizenry, and then also to have aesthetic competence. All of those abilities are reflected in different course experiences. So I get a little, it may be defensive, would be a word, even though I'm a nurse, so it's like I like that STEM stuff. But I get defensive because sometimes we articulate a course as being not relevant or needed anymore when we forget what's the underlying skill that's being built in the study of that particular course. Algebra may be very important because it requires a certain kind of analytic skill that the student is going to need regardless of what discipline or what career path they may choose. Studying Shakespeare may be really relevant because it requires a different kind of analytic and problem-solving process to understand perceptions of others. So I think you have to be a little careful to think that you will eliminate things based on the title of the course without getting underneath what actually happens in the development of the student and the student's learning in that particular experience. Just a thought.
We have time for maybe one more question. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking our presenters one more time.